Good morning, everybody. I know I'm not on camera yet. That's okay. I just want to get this conversation started. So get your contractor's notebook, tag your business bestie, and I want to talk about responsibility when partnering in business, especially if you're a subcontractor in government contracting. Because in subcontracting, you have primes and subcontractors. Here I am. Sorry about that. And everywhere else, you just have what they call partners. However, there was a very interesting ruling that came out. Hey guys, good morning, everybody. As you know what we do over here, this is Contracting Chatter. We discuss business and government contracting. And there was an interesting interpretation of violation of the Fair Pay Act when the sub violates it and the responsibility of the prime. And I'm sorry, everybody else. I'm getting ready to pull up. I'm getting ready to, I need to pull something up real quick because I didn't write down the FAR clause and I want to cite the FAR clause that this applies to. But while we're doing that, my company, well, one of my companies is 10 years old, and on our journey to celebrate 10 years, I'm sharing some tips that I've learned on my journey. And while we're in the midst of sharing all this other stuff. So, and I should have went into my email because that's where this information is. While I was looking at my email, because I subscribe to a lot of things, I saw this very interesting, I don't want to say ruling, but it was an interesting judgment because there are there's one body that deciphers or administers the rules in government contracting and how and determines who's responsible for what. What does that mean? I'm going to tell you. What that means is there's a body that says primes are responsible for their subcontractors treating their employees and their subcontractors this way. And then that trickles all over the place. There's a board of appeals that then decides there's a board of appeals is basically what they're called that interprets the impact of FAR regulations, um, and how those FAR regulations apply to contract administrations and the like. And for anyone who doesn't know what FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulations. I just had a brain fart for a minute because I'm looking for something and I'm talking at the same time. And they say don't walk and chew gum at the same time. That's what I'm doing. So I should have wrote this down when I was jotting down my notes, and I didn't realize I didn't write down the FAR clause. But anyway, what they decided was that the prime is responsible for subcontractors violating the fair pay rule. And like I said, this isn't new that primes are responsible for overseeing, I'm going to use that term, their subcontractors doing the right things, because this has always been sort of an argument in the industry. And the argument is the prime is supposed to make sure that the subcontractor is basically following the rules. That's it. They're supposed to make sure, and they're supposed to periodically check that who they're doing business with is doing it properly and that they're following the rules. Now, the catch 22 is who is allowing their competitor into their books? Nobody with any sense is allowing their competitor in their books. So, how is the prime supposed to ensure that their sub is paying their people fairly? So, that's the catch 22. That is the conundrum. However, that's the ruling that just came out. So we're going to see how this plays out, because, of course, it's going to get appealed. This is going to be litigated for clarity. However, this stance that the prime is responsible for subcontractors violating the fair pay rule is not a new stance. That is a stance that's been around in government contracting since the beginning of time, which is why a lot of the big dogs are hesitant to work with micro small businesses. They're like, micro small businesses don't have their ducks in a row. Micro small businesses don't have it together. That is why I decided to go ahead. I did a virtual summit years ago on how to become a power partner in government contracting. And now I'm taking that virtual summit, I'm transcribing it and adding new content, and I'm turning it into a book. And I'm hosting a 2-day event this September to delve into it. Because, going into government contracting, you want to position yourself to be the go-to answer. And in order to position yourself to be the go-to answer, you need to know how to do it. Hello. And it's more than I'm going to fill out some paperwork, bid on a contract, and get certified. And I will say it until I'm blue in the face, and I will fight anybody over this point. A certification doesn't mean anything if your business systems stink. Certifications will not cover the multitude of sins if you do not have the things in place that will keep a prime from being exposed to risk, or keep the government from being exposed to risk. Hello. As you enter the room, say hello. You know how we were raised. We were raised to greet one another. And as I'm talking this morning, drop your questions in the chat, drop your comments in the chat. If you have anything that I'm saying that's not clear, please let me know. I want to make sure that you're understanding the words that are coming out of my mouth. Because one of the things I want to do, and the purpose of this platform, is to complete the conversation. And by completing the conversation, I mean I want you to understand and get the fullness of what I'm talking about. Hold on, just for half a hot second. So, yes. So, this is a new ruling, although it isn't a new stance, if that makes sense. They've always taken the position that the prime is responsible for the actions of its subcontractors, which is why, once again, I held that virtual summit a couple of years ago, and I'm writing that book becoming a power partner in government contracting. And I'm hosting that summit, or I'm hosting that 2-day event in September, because it's time to complete the circle. It's time to answer those questions. So, as I said, as you're coming into the room, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. If I'm saying something that's not clear, let me know. The proposal is not the end of the process, it's just a part of the process. The beginning of the process is ensuring that your business systems are in place. You have to pay your people fairly. And this ruling is, let me back up to come forward again. There are several instances in government contracting. One, there's a ruling called the Fair Pay Act. Two, there are contracts that actually tell you what you have to pay your employees. There's the SCA contract, which is the Service Contract Administration. There's another contract, and this is beyond, this is not even talking about GSA. Everybody knows about GSA, but this is not even GSA. I mean, there are other contracting vehicles besides GSA. I think I'm going to do a whole masterclass on contract vehicles and multiple contractor awards and things of that nature that tell you what you have to pay. And then, you know what? I think I'm going to do a whole masterclass on that. And you have to pay according to that schedule. You bid according to it, and you have to pay according to it. And as you promote your employee, and as your employee, and there are times, time and grade dictates what the employee is paid. Hear me out, walk with me, stay with me, because I know somebody got out the car. I want you to stay in the car, ride with me a little longer. There are times these contracts, okay, I'm going to talk about sole sources as soon as I finish this conversation. I'll be right there with you. There are times where the contract dictates payments, period. You can't decide the contract bid is $20 an hour and you only want to pay them 18, and that's what you're going to do, and you're bidding the government 20. You can't do that. That's a violation of the contract terms. No. And the government will get you for that. Everything in the government is subject to and will be audited, especially service contract, SCA contracts, especially multiple MSA contracts, especially GSA contracts. Everything in the government is subject to audits. So I don't know why people think, and I'm going to go here. Anybody who's always telling you everything is full of fraud in the government, you need to watch those people, because if their mind is there, then they are either highly jaded or they are suspect in and of themselves. And I'm going to leave that conversation right there. Now, to answer the question about sole source. Sole source contracts, and I talk about that in my book, Keys to Government Contracting, and I talk about it in my class, Stages of Government Contracting. Sole source is basically where you circumvent the whole process. The government says, we're awarding a contract to you for a myriad of factors, one of which is you have the only, or one of the only specialties. And they're just not going to go through the whole bid process. So they sole source. So they're awarding the contract to you based upon the criteria that one, you have such a unique specialty that it's an undue burden to seek this from somebody else. Two, if it's a classified project and you have the classification already and it would take too long to get somebody else classified and cleared, I said classified and the term is cleared. Three, you already have access to the area and the other company doesn't, meaning you're already working a contract in that area and the other company doesn't, so they can sole source it to you based off of that. Here's the thing about positioning for sole source. Can you do it? Yes. With sole sourcing, the contract officer has to be able to withstand any scrutiny that may come as a result of that may come because of the sole sourcing. So that means you have to position yourself. That means have your company resume together. Some people say your capability statement. No, your company resume. Your company resume basically is a listing of all the work your company has done. Who have you worked for? Who have you performed work for? You have to have your resume and your employee resumes together. You have to position the work that you have done in such a light that when they go to justify awarding that contract, and you have to have your back end together in such a way that even when they receive pushback, it's so slight until it's worth sole sourcing. Other than already being cleared, other than having rates, together. So can you position for sole sourcing? Yes. Is it done? Yes. Does the contracting officer have to justify a sole source? Yes. So anybody want to talk to me about or work with me about positioning for sole sourcing? I'm available to do that. In my bio, there's a work with me button. Click that. You will find you can book an appointment. I'm updating my calendar. I forget what I call the session. I will be honest. I forget what I call the session. Now, there is a $200 charge for the session. The $200 will go towards whatever service we book after that. Or if you don't do anything beyond that $200 session, you will walk out of that session with everybody comes out of every session I have with an action list. I mean, that's why I started charging. Because my coach told me your people come out of your session with so much, you should charge. Because you come out of my sessions with a copy of the recording and a full out action list. I mean, several of my when I was doing free sessions, they were coming out with action lists to set up their companies and bid on contracts. So that's why I started charging and stopped doing free sessions. So with that, also I offer, since this is a question that's being asked on another platform, I also offer proposal compliance services. What does that mean? Basically, I review your proposal to make sure you're answering the mail. A lot of people lose out on contracts because they're not answering the questions. And as simple as that sounds, people miss the mail because you're not answering the questions. Proposal writing is not a creative writing project. I am going to say it again. That is not the time to demonstrate to the government that you have an active imagination. That is the time to demonstrate to the government that you can do the job. So if they're asking you, how are you going to deliver hams to the homeless shelter? That is not the time to tell them about the time you took a road trip to California. They don't care. They want to know how you're going to get from the farm to the homeless shelter. That's it. And far too often, people take their proposal as an opportunity to pontificate ad nauseum about stuff that don't mean anything. So you miss the mark trying to do too much. And then you don't answer the question. And then you sit there and wonder why didn't I win? You didn't win because you didn't answer the question. So that's one of the services I offer is a proposal compliance service. Did you answer the question? A lot of people miss when you don't miss on the proposal, you miss on the budget. Your budget stink. And I'm just saying it. You don't include profit. When you write a budget, you have to pay the people who work in the project, you have to pay yourself, and you have to pay your company. I'm going to say this again. You have to pay the people working the project, you have to pay yourself, and you have to pay your company. And I have looked at budgets. I had somebody come into my office, and she said she kept losing out on bids. And she came into my office and I asked her for a copy of her proposal and a copy of her bid, her budget. And when she showed me what she was submitting as for her bids, I said, where's your profit? I didn't even look at her proposal. I stopped on her bid sheet. Where's your profit? I was looking at her bid rates. That's why she wasn't winning. Because her bid rate was so ridiculously low. She was positioning herself as an unstable company. Her bid rate said, one, she didn't know what she was doing, and two, she wasn't going to be around. Let me take a bite of this muffin. When the government looks at your budget, the budget is looking for the longevity of your organization. The government is looking to see, one, do you have the ability to withstand and survive for the long haul of this project? And the way they do that is to see if you are bidding for the long haul. And for all you people who think I'm going to come in here and bid cheap, the government knows how much this costs. Your budget should include labor, the cost for performing this work, and profit. I know. I just said something that none of y'all like. Every company is entitled to profits. And there's a difference between profits and revenue. You started a business, there you go. Every company is entitled to profits. And profits is how you pay the company. And if you're not included a profit margin in all of your bids, how is the company sustaining itself? So how are you in business, let alone a government contractor, with bid rates that will not allow you to pay the business to stay around to pay the employees? Hello. Is this making sense to anybody? The business has to be sustainable in order for it to pay the employees, in order for it to complete the project. It's an ecosystem. It Does this make sense to anybody? If I'm resonating with anybody, let me know. If I'm not, I will say it another way. I'm assuming I'm making sense. If I'm not, drop it in the chat. My DMs are open. You can drop a question in there. You can work with me, because one of the lessons that I have learned, I would have gotten further faster if I had to just work with the coach. I'm gonna take it a little bit higher. I would have gotten further faster if I would have hired the first coach who told me to fire the first team I had. I'm gonna let that sink in. The first coach I spoke to told me to fire the first team I had. And he told me to fire them he told me to fire them because they weren't staying in their lane. And I know that's hard to understand. And let me explain what I mean staying in their lane. I am the visionary as the founder of my company. And as the founder of my company and the visionary of my company, and this is going to sound like an arrogant statement, but it is what it is. It's not my job to explain everything to everybody. And I often have these grandiose visions. That's cool. That's what I do. They were so busy fighting the vision until we couldn't get where we were going, because all of them couldn't see the vision. So they were fighting the vision. And then they got to fighting each other, because some people were like, we're just in it to win it. So we don't have to see the vision. We believe in you. And some of them was like, we need to see every step of the way. Otherwise, we're not doing it. So it became this infighting on the team. And he was like, you need to fire the team. Well, you need to fire members on the team. And I was like struggling because these were people I knew. And he was like, you can't do business this way. And one of the points that the guest on my podcast made, the guest on my podcast tomorrow, Dwayne Williams, he made an excellent point. Business isn't emotional. And at that time, I was new in my company was new, I was new. And I was so loyal to the people who were loyal to me until I messed up, because I should have fired the people who weren't just on board. It isn't your job to see the vision. It is your job to just come in and do the work. Because when it came time for me to pull for what I asked them for, they didn't do it. So we lost out on money. And then they was like, but if you had explained, it wasn't your place. I'm the founder. I'm the visionary. It wasn't your place for me to explain it to you. It was your place to do what I asked you to do. So when I needed to pull it so that I could complete the picture, I had it. So we lost out on a huge opportunity because they were so busy trying to manage my company that they didn't found, because they didn't have the vision to found a company. So I'm sharing this as a point of a lesson for those who are founding companies. Know who you're building your business with. Are they visionaries? And then what position are you placing them? Are they visionaries? Because everybody who start off with you can't be in certain seats, and they shouldn't be in certain meetings. I know some people feel like I have this skill and I have that skill. The difference between, and this is a point that I learned as I've been building my business, just because you're skilled for management doesn't mean you're capable to be a manager. And that's the difference. And it's just a thing that I've learned as I build my business. Now, I have a whole list of what I'm not going to do as a manager. And I developed that list from the bad managers I've had in industry. And for those who want to say there's no such thing as a bad manager, yes, there is. I've had them. Is there such thing as a bad employee? Yes, there are bad employees. I've been one. I will take ownership. I've been a bad employee. I've hit some hard points in my life, and instead of dealing with it, I've tried to muscle through it, which made me a bad employee because I wasn't focused. But are there bad managers? Yes, those are those micromanaging people, or those people who have double standards, or those managers who are threatened by talented employees. You can't be that and build a business. I talk about that in my book, and I'm going to talk about that in my revised edition that's coming out. When you map out, Jesus, fix it. When you map out your skills, map out the skills that you don't have and hire the people who have the skills you don't have. The answer to who don't have to be you. And if you think the answer to who is always got to be you, you are setting yourself up for heartache, failure, and a nervous breakdown in every way, shape, or form. You will always be stressed and aggravated and some more stuff if you think you have to be the center of all activity in your business. You will, I'm warning you, if that's your attitude, that's what's going to be. You will aggravate yourself. So, to wrap up today's edition of Contracting Chatter, make sure that you're developing a sound team. And tomorrow, I'm going to talk about team building. And if I don't talk about it, somebody remind me. Because as the day goes on and I hear about some new legislation, I'll come up with a whole new topic. Ensure that you are meeting the metrics in your business and of the contract. Because the prime, if you're coming in subbing, is always responsible for the actions of its subcontractor. So if you are a subcontractor, the prime is responsible for your actions. If you are the prime, you are responsible for the actions of your subs. You need to understand or be aware of the rules that are governing the industry. Respect the industry. I have on my YouTube channel a video, and I believe I'm going to reshoot this training on some of the prevailing terminology that's just top of mind. But one thing that is very top of mind is something called the Christian doctrine. And that is, it applies whether it appears there or not. It's applied by reference. That's the Christian doctrine. And people love this, but it doesn't say it in here. If it's mentioned once somewhere else, it flows down. So if you are a subcontractor on a contract, if it appears in the main RFP, it applies in your subcontract. So always, always, always read the main RFP. That's why the prime is always responsible for the subcontractor's actions. So the Christian doctrine says all clauses flows down. That's what the Christian doctrine is. And if you are becoming or want to become a government contractor, and the Christian doctrine doesn't just apply in government contracting, however, that's where I was introduced to it. Excuse me. That's where I was introduced to it. So the clauses flow down. It's the flow down of clause from the prime to subcontractor. And that's why your subcontracting agreements aren't 400 pages long. Be in a position of power to mitigate and reduce risk. Will risk go away 100%? No. However, you want to mitigate and reduce it as much as power. Am I an attorney? No, I don't play one on TV. However, I do know how to help you reduce risk in government contracting. And you do that by establishing compliant business systems, learning the rules, and develop compliant systems. Pure, plain, and simple. I go live daily, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Contracting Chatter. This is a business and government contracting platform where we complete the conversation. We talk about all things business and government contracting. We discuss legislation, up and coming, newly introduced legislation from a business perspective. We don't get into politics over here. There's enough political pundits running around here without you needing a new one. I have a new episode of my podcast, which is Contractors Conversation, dropping tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, barring any technical difficulties, with my guest, Dwayne Williams, where we're talking about, now I titled the episode Check Your Structure, but we're talking about LLCs. We're talking about using Cash App in your business. I know none of my people are doing that, but we're talking about it. We're talking about working with the IRS. We're actually discussed PPP, the whole famous PPP. So it's a very great episode. I want you to tune into it. It's streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Amazon Music. It goes live at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, Friday, April 19th. And I said that's with my special guest, Dwayne Williams. You can catch him. He goes live on TikTok. He should be going live in the next 15 minutes or so. So he's a great tax expert. And if you have any questions about structure, LLC versus corporation, he's great with that. So with that, unless anybody have any more questions for me, I'm going to close out today's segment. If you want to work with me, click the work with me link on any of my platforms. On TikTok, go to my bio. The link is there. It's https colon backslash backslash ltacg.as.me. Book a session. You will also see some other classes, some other things there. I will be hosting a masterclass on nonprofits coming up soon. As I also said, I'm having a book coming out on power partner and government contracting, and a 2-day class this September on one is to take the book and we're going to another level, and some implementation lab based off of the book, how to tighten that class. If you want to do soul sourcing, you want to be in the room in September here in the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina. With that, I'm signing off because I have some RFPs to write myself and some other things. But keep this in mind. A stressed mind can never create. So when you find yourself and you can't find the answer to a question, that's because you're stressed over it. Walk away from it. It's a beautiful day outside. Go for a walk. You will find your answer in the peace. So I will see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Luciana Turner, your host for Contracting Chatter. I'll see you tomorrow morning.